Excuse me, Dr. Wachter. Thank you so much for your wonderful and very thoughtful presentation.
Thank you.
If I may ask you something, yesterday, I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to see, but a paper was published on BMJ, and the paper was called Digital Clinical Encounters. The subheading said, managed safely, digital recordings could transform healthcare. The first author is Professor Glenn Elwin, who's a professor in the USA. You may probably know him. He's been working on clinical decision-making, trying to understand those things from a patient perspective, or the process of clinical decision-making between physicians or healthcare workers and their patients. The point that it is raised in this paper has to do with introducing, from a digital perspective, the AI, the artificial intelligence, in terms of all these recordings, the possibilities, the absolutely challenging perspective in terms of digitizing. I'm sorry about my accent. How to? Thank you. Can you please give some thoughts, some of your comments in terms of do we still know in deep clinical decision-making process within the perspective of patient participating more actively on that, but we are on a sort of a second challenge, not only in terms of informatizing all those data, but also looking from an artificial intelligence perspective. If you could tell us some of your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think artificial intelligence is about to get very exciting in healthcare. I think, and the reason is that a few things have happened in the last few years. One is the science of artificial intelligence has become massively better just in the last 2 or 3 years, machine learning and deep learning and all of that. And you see now the beginnings of the fruits of that. You know, Google can look at a retinal exam picture and grade it for retinopathy better than an experienced ophthalmologist. Anything that can be done by looking at thousands or millions of versions of it and coming up with predictive patterns, the computers will do better than we do. So that's part of why it's going to get better quickly. The second is now they do have access to huge amounts of digital data. That's getting to be tricky because of all of the Facebook controversy. All of us are a little bit wary of working with these companies and giving them our data. But I think we'll figure that out. And we have been doing some projects with Google where they have been analyzing our data, and through those analyses, they can predict readmissions better than any prior algorithm can. The third advance is cloud computing. So the amount of computer power that is now available to take in millions and millions of patient records is quite staggering. So it's going to get better pretty quickly, and I'm glad, because at some point we wonder about who's going to be practicing medicine. But I think that I would worry about that if I was a radiologist. I would worry about that if I was a pathologist. I'd worry about that if I was a dermatologist. I'd worry about that when the job is primarily looking at an image and interpreting it. I think it's hard for me to believe that the computers won't be better at that in the next 3 to 5 years. There still will be a role for some specialists, but the day-to-day work, I think a lot of it will be taken over by computers. When I think about what I do as a general internist, it's going to take quite a long time for computers to take over that, because so much of the work is gathering the data, filtering it. If I interview a patient, you're gathering 100 pieces of data. If you just put 100 pieces of data in the computer doesn't know the difference between the patient who says, oh, and I have neck pain and arm pain and chest pain and belly pain, and the patient who says, I have chest pain. Those are different, but they both read as you have chest pain. So the physical exam, the interpretation of the data back to the patient. All of that, I think there will be a role for doctors, but I don't know about you. I would love it if a computer could say to me, patients like this, with this constellation of symptoms and signs and lab tests, turned out to have lupus 82% of the time and Still's disease 12% of the time. And I think that would be helpful. One of the interesting things is going to be where do they get their information from? Is it from the medical literature, or is it from the record of patients in your healthcare system, or some combination of both? And increasingly, it's going to be the latter. Increasingly, it's going, the early artificial intelligence was how do we take the medical literature, which is too big for any human to know, and say this set of signs and symptoms equals a high probability of lupus. Increasingly, it won't do it that way, and it won't make treatment recommendations based on double-blind trials. It will. My system, the University of California, has 15 million patients in it. It will, and we're all on one computer system. It will be scouring those 15 million records and saying patients who met that profile turned out to have lupus, and when they had lupus, when they were treated with this drug, they did better than when they were treated with that other drug. Now, that's tricky to do because you have to adjust for all the confounders, but I think that clearly is the direction we're going in, and until we're all out of jobs, which I think is a while, I think it's actually going to make healthcare much better.